Okay, once I've made my raw data table, then I've made my process data table by using wire length and finding the average mass for each wire length. Now before I finally do my trend line and label my graph, what I want to do is I want to have some kind of indicator in my graph that shows something about the variability in my data. Remember the whole thing that we did with sig figs and precision? The whole purpose is that we want to communicate the degree of uncertainty in our measurements. In science, it's very important to claim what you can claim, but not to overreach your claims. Unfortunately, that doesn't get translated into the media a lot, but that's what science tries to do. So if I can show the variability in my data set here, then that will give me some indication about where my trend line should be. And it may or may not fall exactly on those points. There are several ways to do variability. One of the simplest ones to do by hand is the range. So find the smallest one. The smallest one up here would be 8.5, and the biggest one. The biggest one in this row would be 12. So the range of my masses for the 5 millimeter wire is from 8.5 grams to 12.0 grams. Unfortunately, this is one place where the Excel does not permit that functionality. So I can't simply put error bars in here that show the range of my data set. However, there's another way to do it, which requires a bit of a calculation called standard deviation. You don't have to know anything about the technical calculation. Just understand that what standard deviation does is it calculates these values and finds what do all of these values do, or how far are all of these values from the average. And in effect, it finds the average difference of all their differences. So here we find the average of all the masses. Now we're going to find, in effect, the average of all the differences. Okay, so a big standard deviation means there's a lot of variability in your data, and a small standard deviation means there's less variability in your data. So let's get this in here first. Standard deviation, and it's going to be measured in the same units. It's going to be measured in grams. Now I want to find the standard deviation for the 5 millimeter wire that has the average mass of 10.4 grams. So I'm going to do it just like I did means. I'm going to click on this box. I'm going to type on my keyboard equals STDEV, and we want this one down here, the basic one. So double click there, STDEV, and now it selects that formula. It puts a parenthesis for you, and now you choose which values you want to find standard deviation for. In this box, we want to find standard deviation for these values, okay, the same ones we used to calculate this mean. I've selected them. It automatically puts those in there. Now I have to close the parenthesis, shift close or bracket, and then punch enter. Bam, there's my calculation. So my standard deviation is nearly all these measurements are within 1.3 grams of 10.4. So 10.4 plus 1.3 would be 11.7. And they're almost all in there. That one's outside. 10.4 minus 1.3 would be down to 9.1. Most of them are in that range. This one extends a little beyond that. So now I have a systematic way to calculate the variability of my data. What do you need to understand? That standard deviation is one standard way to measure variability in data. I'm going to select that value. I'm going to center it, and I can have one more decimal place in standard deviation than I have in my means for reasons that we're not going to work on in this course. So here I have adjusted my precision. Now that same precision will be applied to all of them, so we'll go back and fix those in a moment. So let's calculate standard deviation here and here and here and here. And just like we did in means, we can click on this box, select the handle, that little square there, click, left click and drag down, and it's going to calculate the standard deviation of all of the rows. Let's just double check by clicking on the bottom one. Yep, the standard deviation of those values on the bottom. Enter, so we're good to go. Now, how do we get this onto our graph? Watch this. So I have my graph made. These are my mean points, which I did earlier. I'm going to click on one of my data points. Any one doesn't matter. Click on one and they're all selected. I'm going to go up here. Under error bars, don't click this box because it does this goofy thing where it just gives you the same standard deviation for everyone, which it is not. You see my differences here. So let's unclick that. And let's go over to this triangle. Click on this triangle. Choose More Options. Once this menu pops up, scroll to the bottom. Click on Custom right here and specify values. So now it's asking us, all right, Mr. Reimer, I have selected all my data points. What do you want their standard deviations to be? Well, this is how much will this standard deviation be greater than the mean, positive, how much below the mean, negative. So it has selected this for me. I'm going to go and just choose all my standard deviations. Then on the negative side, the same thing. Choose all my standard deviations. By the way, I just clicked and dragged there. Now I'm going to punch in OK. And now you can see that it has different size error bars. Now, this standard deviation, the variability that I just put into this graph, is a variability in mass, not in length, right? Okay, mass in this case is being measured on the y-axis. So that's where my variability should show up. But I haven't done any calculations to find variability on my x-axis because I don't have any variability. I just made one measurement each time. So I'm going to go over here with my mouse. I'm going to click on the x-axis standard deviations. Notice they're all identical, which tells you that they're meaningless. I'm going to select my x-axis error bars, and I'm going to punch delete on my keyboard, and now they're gone. So all I have are my y-axis, my variability in the mass, and my variability this time is the standard deviation. Sorry this video was a little bit long, but it's a little bit complex. Now you know, by looking at this video, how to put error bars into your graph that show the standard deviation of your data. And what is standard deviation? Standard deviation is just a way to systematically measure the variability in a data set and show that variability on your graph. Notice this point has very low variability. All the points fall between, or nearly all the points fall between that top line and the bottom line. Over here I have more variability. All or nearly all my data points fall between the top line and the bottom line. So small variability here, and in this data set, actually the variability increases, which makes sense. When my wire is longer, there's more place for error in mass, and so I have more errors in mass right here. Thanks for watching. I hope this was helpful.